everybody. My name is Marta Alberti-Dunn. It is quite a long name. I've recently acquired, and now we've got the doctor in front as well. So I wanted to start this presentation with a picture of the time in which I was just Marta Alberti, and you can see here myself holding my first coin that I ever found during the excavations here at Vindolanda. So hopefully, most of you in the virtual room already know me. It's lovely to see so many known faces. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the excavations in the northeastern quadrant of the last stone fort here at Vindolanda. This is part of a scheduled monument consent, which commenced in 2024. So we're in our second year of excavation. Our scheduled monument consent covers the last quadrant to be excavated inside the 3rd century and 4th century fortifications, as well as the eastern ditch just outside the fort walls. So by completing this excavation, we will have the first full 3rd and 4th century floor plan completely excavated and consolidated in a fort on Hadrian's Wall. And as far as I know, the first one whose excavation was conducted under modern condition. The excavations inside the fort started in earnest in the late 1990s with the excavation of the commanding officer house in 1998, although the central range was also partially investigated in the 1940s. But the vast majority of the fort has been excavated under modern condition, which means all of the finds have got finds positioning and context, and they're quite easy to sort of lay out in the fort. So it's quite an interesting assemblage, and we're very excited to bring both the visitors and researchers this incredible accomplishment by 2028, when in 2029 we will be celebrating 100 years of scientific excavation at the site, as well as the next Hadrian's Wall pilgrimage. So that's the area that we're excavating. You see what we got up to in the last 2 years. I would say we are about 80% done. There's a little bit more grass to be removed and a little bit more of the 1980s Paul Bidwell excavation backfill to remove. But we all know that when we talk about Vindolanda, we're all here for the goodies. The Vindolanda excavation has been producing some astounding artifacts ever since its inception as part of the Vindolanda Trust work in 1970. So I thought I would get the astounding artifacts straight out of the bat so that if you need to doze off after, that's fine. So we'll start with this beautiful copper alloy silvered handle with oak leaf detail. You can see the detail in the oval picture in the middle. It's very delicate, and when looking for comparatives, I struggled a little bit. At the beginning, when we first excavated it, the volunteer who excavated it suggested it might be a helmet handle. However, as you can see from the picture, which is taken from Fisher 2014, this lacks the flexibility needed for a helmet handle, which needs to be able to flap up and down so that the helmet can be carried. The most effective comparison is box and furniture handles. So you can see from the PAS artifact in the bottom that these are not flexible or flappy. They are screwed in place, and you can see in our example, our copper alloy silvered example, where the screws would be. The other thing that made it into the press is this rather delightful 4th century jet pendant representing a phallus. This is strung through the testes, which is pretty unusual. As I was looking for comparisons, I found an abundance of phalluses and phallus pendants. I found a really interesting article by Alyssa Whitmore on phallic magic and how phalluses are widespread in the Roman material culture. But this is the only example that I could find that is strung through the testes rather than having an additional hoop like the one that you see here represented in the PAS. It's interesting that it's made of jet. Jet is quite a warm material. It holds body heat. It can be quite shiny. This would have laid flat on the chest or the neck of the person wearing it. And we know that York and Arbeia are two major workshops for jet in Britain. So this little pendant could come from quite near us. Another find that made it into the press was this rather delightful carving of Victory. So this was found used as the fill of a third century barrack. It was used as a sort of elevation to get the fourth century floor on. And as you can see from Dillis and Jim, there are lovely volunteers kneeling next to their find. You can see that the fourth century floor is kind of all around it. So this is probably dating to circa 213 AD, and it seems to go with a arch whose foundations were located in the southern end of the infantry barrack that this was found in. It was identified by Rob Collins as Victory, and here we've got a couple of more examples of Victory. The statue always wears a peplon, and the peplon is arranged so that the belt is quite prominent, and it carries a cornucopia. Now, that's pretty unusual. I always see cornucopias as something curved, but you can see in picture A and in our photo of our Victory that this more looks like a Olympic flame or an Olympic torch. Is quite a straight thing. So these three were our star finds that everybody talked about. But today I want to talk to you a little bit more about what a mundane finds assemblage can tell you about the areas that one might or might not be excavating. And we are very spoiled at Vindolanda because we're able to call things like this beautiful little arrowhead mundane. I know many a site would be absolutely delighted, and this would be the star find of the week or the year. Obviously, we are just talking about a site in which the abundance of finds makes things like this little arrowhead pretty common. So the interesting pattern that you can see on the side is the distribution of iron artifacts in 2024 and 2025. The blue is 2024 and the green is 2025. Now, there is an abundance of iron artifacts in the 3rd and 4th century context. However, it's interesting to see how in 2025 these iron artifacts are concentrated in the rampart area, indicating, together with the evidence from the excavation, that this area would have most likely been used as metalworking, repair and production area. We also had lots of copper alloys in the same area, indicating that it wasn't exclusively iron that was being piled on and recycled. This one is a copper alloy silver cast spoon. We did find some comparatives in the portable antiquity scheme. It's quite a broad date from 43 to circa 300 CE. It can be used for medicinal or cosmetic purposes. And this one was found in the floor of the 3rd century barrack underneath the levels in which the Victory was found. So it's a very pretty find. But the majority of copper alloys, again, as you can see in this distribution, in green are the 2025 copper alloys are concentrated on the rampart area, indicating that the community that lived in this part of the fort in the 3rd and 4th century tended to carry their copper alloys and irons once they were in a certain state of disrepair to the rampart area, where either a blacksmith or more than one blacksmith operated professionally, or people could do their own blacksmithing and smithing and repairs. Obviously, we've got a fantastic assemblage of beads as usual. I've attended a talk from Ruth Beveridge, who's the small find specialist for Ward Lamstrung, and we talked extensively about the lovely gold in glass spindle bead that you see over here. That's quite unusual. but we do have several examples of it. We have the very common but still very beautiful crimped bead in the middle, created by rolling a rod of unicolor glass and then pinching it at various points. And then we've got what I like to call the donut bead. These are very beautiful. One of them graces the cover of the Vindolanda guidebook, and this is very look-alike of that, but it's not that. So beads, bracelets, and intaglios have been classified by the chair of the Roman Finds Group and fine specialist for the Vindolanda Trust and curator for the Vindolanda Trust, Barbara Burley, as objects of personal adornment. So she's done quite a lot of work on these beads, bracelets, intaglios, together with Elizabeth Green from Western Ontario. So here we have the distribution of beads. They're quite a frequent find. That's quite interesting. However, we only have 7 intaglios across the 2 years and only 12 bracelets. So the beads are the most common object of personal adornment. The black bracelet that you see in the picture over there is not jet, is very dark black-green glass, which imitates jet, but would have been less expensive. So these are the distribution of the beads and the bracelets and the intaglios. As you can see, they're mostly found in domestic environments with the occasional loss or discard in public spaces. But again, inside domestic environments. We know that it's hard to gender small finds. Lindsay Allison-Jones and Pim Allison have done all sorts of studies on distribution and identity. But objects of personal adornment can be associated with women. And here we see that in the 3rd and 4th century, these are inside domestic spaces. Now, my argument has long been that the most effective gendered artifact in Roman context, especially in 3rd and 4th century Roman context, is spindle whorls. So you can see a picture of a rather delightful pottery spindle whorl here in my rarely manicured hand, and yet here we are. And the distribution of spindle whorls just next door, blue 24 and green 25. Again, mostly commonly found in domestic spaces. The domestic space at the very bottom doesn't appear to be as populated, the one with the oven that you can see at the bottom of the distribution picture over there. So it's interesting that spindle whorls, bracelets, and beads are found a lot more commonly outside of domestic spaces, but spindle whorls are found predominantly in domestic spaces. Now, this is a blast from the past. This map is a map from the presentation that I gave to the Roman Finds Group and Rack Track in 2018, when I looked at the distribution of spindle whorls made out of pottery and made out of prestigious materials in the northwestern quadrant and southeastern quadrant of the last stone fort. So we've got the pottery spindle whorls in green and the prestigious materials such as jet, shale, or bone and wood in blue. So it's interesting that the spindle whorls in the 4th century continue to appear predominantly inside domestic contexts. And this is something that I want to continue to research and I want to look at once we will have completed the excavation of the 3rd and 4th century layers across the whole fort, because I think there is some very interesting statements that can be made about where women lived and worked inside the fort in the 3rd century. It wouldn't be a Roman Finds Group presentation if I didn't conclude it with a mystery object. Here we have an iron object that was found on the rampart. It weighs quite a bit, about ½ kilo. There is a few parallels. I believe Frances might have one in her collection, but this one that I found was found in Roman Darlington by PCA. It is, to all intents and purposes, a lamp holder. However, we can see that there is quite a lot of material concreted, impacted onto the surface. And this was found in the areas on the rampart surrounding a very, very interesting, fully flagged and fully stone-lined furnace. So quite fun. We did scratch our head for a little bit on why it would have such a vast amount of impacted slag and material inside. Was it then used as a crucible or to pour molten metal? It's quite interesting. I put this to the team. It looks like it most likely started its life as a lamp holder. The Vindolanda Trust is not only about structures and finds. You will also find that we've been working with a resident artist to bring contemporary art into places of heritage. The finds of our collection inspire thousands of people every year, and we've been looking to meet new audiences, the audiences of contemporary art through the Votum project. We've had the pleasure of having David Appleyard as an artist in resident, and he's designed a series of symbols inspired by the collection. Here you can see the wheat sheaf, which was inspired by a rather beautiful mortaria that was stamped and found this year. This exhibit, we will continue with it until the 2nd of November, but various resources will continue to go on well past that. However, if you haven't made it, please come and see, if you have a chance, the Votum exhibit. We are doing our last symbol switch today. And so this is all that I wanted to talk to you about today, and I will look forward to your no doubt many, many questions. Thank you very much.